Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. ccgprime.com with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as fowlibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at fowlibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Deck power.
Yeah, there's a
Hey
natural
there,
order to
rulers.
these things.
Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. It's the first ever
Happy
2022
New Year.
office hours with your favorite ever live podcast host, which is me, Demo73, and I am joined by, if his internet holds out, Mike Rance. Oh, that's perfect. That his internet, that when I introduced Mike
Don't
Rance,
hold your breath.
and his internet is stable, Paul Reisman.
I've been here the whole time.
He's been here the whole time. Glad to have you here. We enjoy being able to talk to you about all kinds of good stuff. I think gonna have a pretty. I want the chat to be active tonight because we got some spicy take coming up today. I'm really interested. I'm also loving seeing all these emotes in the chat. If you want access to be able to use those emotes as well as to consider supporting the channel financially, you can click that little join button down below and start your schooling here at Ruler School to join as a member. It goes to support the channel, gets you cool perks like membership, emotes, as well as roles in the Discord and other kinds of cool things like being able to submit your deck lists to us for private deck doctoring, games with us, merch, all kinds of cool stuff. You can check that out, and we really appreciate it. That being said, do want to say again, huge thanks to the sponsors. We have CCG Prime and Odyssey Games. CCG Prime is doing another giveaway today for those in the US only. We're going to give away a playset of Dark Alice Smiles later in the podcast, so be sure to stick around for your chance to get that. And with that, guys, I have a question for you. Is turn one really the play? To put that into... yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Well, given that you and I had this conversation, no.
Oh?
It's not the play.
It's not the play.
Not
the play. Oh, yeah, Patrick, your
Don't
membership
be
payment,
number one.
you need to re-up it. Taylor Marzano, welcome. I'm loving the emotes there. Yeah, turn one. And what I mean there is, like, is it right to try to pop off or kind of maximize your value on turn one? We've been seeing this in almost every single order deck specifically. We're seeing it in Nyarlathotep. We're seeing it in Kaguya. Not as much in Loki and Odin. It's more like they just enjoy flipping on one because they like just sitting on their order side for how their interaction is based. But especially with Kaguya and Nyarlathotep, we're seeing a lot of like people trying to just go off on turn one. And if your experiences from the last couple weeks of watching me bully Kaguya players in the feature matches is at least some indication, the more I play, the less good I think that is, even for Nyarlathotep. And so I kind of want to talk about that, get some takes about it, and see what it really means for the order rulers as a concept, as well as how they should be being built in terms of how you should approach it. So, Mike, in your experience, when I say like a turn one pop off, what are like some things that you can share about like what that kind of means for a deck and how it should be built, and your thoughts on like competitive viability of something like that?
Yeah, a lot of the time when it comes to a turn one pop off, you're kind of thinking of a deck that's almost built to be the combo, not a deck that splashes in its own part of the combo. And I think that's part of the reason that we're even here today to talk about this. Because obviously, like, if you can pop off turn one and go off, then you're going off. Obviously, like if your opponent doesn't have the answer and you have the problem, then you're the problem.
Right.
You're gonna make somebody dead. But if you're, trying to focus all resources into one combo. Your opponent has the single answer that they need. Then suddenly your deck just falls apart, and your opponent can stabilize, come back at you on the crackback. It's the same reason I I've been a big proponent against Wolfgang 1.0 for a while, just because I don't think it's healthy for a metagame to have, you know, a stupid quality turn one lethal play. But obviously the answers for it are so widespread and so commonplace that it's like it doesn't even matter that it exists, because either you win turn one or you lose turn one.
Right.
And that's kind of the same thing that we're seeing with something along the lines of like the Nyarlathotep combos, where you just kind of go off. Honestly, Nyarlathotep needs more deck space than Wolfgang does to kill somebody too.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like you're playing a worse version of a fast combo, and it's just like it just doesn't really make that much sense
Yeah, and we've had
to put all your resources in.
we've had pop off decks that have been the like, this is the deck that you should play before, that have been competitively viable because the answers to it were so narrow. I liken back to Prisia, like red green Prisia, right? The answers to that were literally 2 cards. There were only 2 cards in the entire meta that stopped that from going off, which was your opponent having a Death Scythe or you being a mad lad and running Final Forfeit in the main, right? Those were it. Like, in the meta, those were it. And I can speak to the fact that the tournament that got me my second invite to Worlds, I played that event with that deck, knowing that that was the thing that I was going to be walking into, and I got to finals because I had a lot of games where my opponent didn't open Death Scythe, wasn't playing Final Forfeit, and so like that worked, right? That played out. And I lost in the finals because I was playing against the Mad Lad Kentober, who was playing both of those threats. He was playing Death Scythe and Final Forfeit. So like, you know what I mean? Like he was sure up for that situation, but it was still the right meta call for the environment we're in. And I think the thing right now is the freshness and the coolness of the new order and what it can possibly do, I think, is blinding people to just how easy it is to make it not do that. And so I'm wondering if we're looking at order rulers or the viability of order rulers, like, is it better to have a deck that's able to pop off 30% of the time, but maybe doesn't really have anything later other than that, or a deck that like 10% of the time you just open the nuts and can go for it, but you're not like playing to that. You're like just playing a good, grind, a good value deck, like a good consistent deck that just sometimes will get you there. Because I do think those are very different deck builds, right? Like, I don't think I even liken it to the 2 different Nyarlathoteps, right? Like, the Swifty Nyarlathotep feels very much like I'm trying to pop off super fast, whereas the +X Nyarlathotep is like, I'm going to sit back and bide my time and I'm going to find my way there. Maybe I'll open the nuts, right? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Paul.
So the way that I'm viewing this whole conversation is... We're going to ban this person. Hold on.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
I got it.
Goodbye.
Jeremy, you've gotten big enough to get spam bots.
Woo!
pay us enough to help us get spam bots. So the way I'm viewing this is the same way that I'm currently viewing current competitive Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same dynamic. So on one end we have Force of Will, and on the other end we have currently what competitive Yu-Gi-Oh is.
Sure.
So we're over here where in the current format of Yu-Gi-Oh, from what I understand, because I don't play this hot garbage format anymore, I basically end on a full board with 2 Omni Negates that can only be broken by a Nibiru, which sacrifices all my creatures, right? And that is turn 1. Or you can be in foul, where you can be like, yeah, I'm going to pop off, I'm going to do all these things, I'm going to do all this stuff, and then I just answer you with 1 card. So over here, I am exerting my powers, because I have many. So over here in Yu-Gi-Oh land, you either make a full board and your opponent happens to draw the 1 card that's outing you, or you don't. and your opponent wins on turn 1. Or you're over here in foul, where you can pop off on turn 1, but because there are like 10 answers to the move you're making, you're gonna cry.
Yeah.
So don't be a Yu-Gi-Oh player who's caught in the foul mentality, in the foul world. Popping off turn 1 right now is not a good idea.
Yeah.
There are too many answers. Too many answers.
It can be very and I've talked about this before.
More than 2 Omni negates.
More than 2. It can be very tempting and addicting to try to push it. It's the idea of, well, if you got it, you got it, right? So like you're building a deck to try to like high roll all the time. But again, I think you have to recognize that like in the competitive history of Yu-Gi-Oh, or sorry, not Yu-Gi-Oh. Gosh, Paul, got me talking about the wrong game. In the competitive history of FAO, high roll decks have almost never been the deck to get the invite, right? They are the deck to top 16. They are the deck to low top 8 or high seed top 8, like, you know, 5th, 6th, 7th. They can get there, but rarely do the high roll, to the like all-in high roll decks really get you there. And I think a really good example of that is Mike's deck from Minnesota that got him his GP win, right? Mike, you were playing a version of the deck with Lich, with like the Athenia loop combo stuff and everything else, where you were playing in such a way that like if you happen to draw the nuts, like you could do the combo, right? Early, like you could do it early.
Yeah.
But your deck wasn't like designed for that. Your deck was to say like, no, I'm doing these good value plays and I'm like gonna incrementally gain value and assert pressure and like control the board state. And then I'm going to find my moment and then we're going to make the play. Then we're going to make the push. If we happen to have an opponent who doesn't understand it, doesn't respect it, and I draw well, I can threaten it, but it's a back burner concept versus a core tenet of like how you were approaching your game state, how you were approaching your deck build. And I'm thinking the more I play with the order rulers, the more I think that's the way that they should be built to be competitively successful. And it's one of the reasons why I think current ideas for Nyarlathotep are not nearly as good as people give them credit for. Flashy, very, very flashy, frustrating as heck to like get beat by, right? But like once you learn it, and you respect it, it's very easy to just, it's a lot easier to disrupt than I think people give it credit for. Because like Paul said, it's like 10 different answers in like a bunch of different colors. Going into the comments real quick. Decks that go off turn 1 or combo decks in general you should always be ready for, with a few spots in the side deck. Reminds me of Dredge and Magic. I like, that's the thing is like yes, I agree. But like the answers to Gnarly, the answers to a turn 1 Hanzo are just in general good cards. They're not like specific cards that you should be playing against those. They're like just generally good. So that makes it even like, I think that's a big part here too. As I kind of read this is like, I think that makes them even less good, like the combo decks even less good, because the answers are just like generic good cards as opposed to like, I gotta side in these 6 cards I wouldn't normally use. Like, you know what's a good card? Gradius. Just a generic good card. Okay, I'm gonna play 4 of it. Whoops. I've been playing into the you tapped out, I kill you now, Gnarly. Yeah, so you just don't tap out. Like, don't tap out against Gnarly. Which goes back to this conversation of, is turn 1 really the play? It's not. Just like Callstone Pass. Like I will point out, Callstone Pass or Callstone Mana Dork has been, to this day, one of the best Force of Will plays ever. Continues
Name
to
me
be
one play that's better than turn 1 Sacred Elf.
Yeah.
Turn 1 flute.
in its time. Yeah, turn 1 flute, right? Like, you know,
because it has barrier.
Because it has barrier, right? Force of Will, Ryan Miles has talked about this on the podcast before, just this most recent time. The answers in Force of Will have always been better than the threats. Force of Will is a game of answers. And I think right now, the answer is not only cards, but in approach to how you're playing the actual game itself. And I think it stands that the approach to the game when you're playing as an answer, when you're playing to answer, I think is still to this day in this format better than playing to pop off. I just think so. At least on turn 1, right? Which I think is, turn 1, turn 2, which is I think where the hyper fixation is currently at right now in terms of how people are viewing it. Stranger Jank, I mean, RR was pretty toxic. It was 99% of the top decks for a long span. RR is a different beast. So like RR
is not a deck.
RR was toxic for a different reason, because it was, regardless of what type of deck you were playing, any ruler you would want to play for that deck was just worse than RR. So that's different in terms of like why that was a problem. But thanks for bringing that up so we could clarify that. Playing Wolfgang 1.0 and opening God Hand makes you want to pop off for that one time to tell your friend you did the combo and won a game. Yeah, I get it.
It's cool.
It's flashy.
Dumb,
it's
cool.
Yeah, right. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's flashy. It makes you feel like haha. It makes you dab on people, right? But in terms of competitive viability, it's not the way. The pop-offs will probably get worse as the set releases and more answers show up. I think the pop-offs have gotten worse in the last 5 days. if I'm being honest. I think that the pop-offs were great for the first week of the set, but I think within a week the pop-offs have gotten awful. Or have gotten, sorry, not awful, but like the pop-offs have gotten worse. I will tell you what, in a Yarlathotep deck I've been playing, and you'll watch this deck that I'm playing the feature match this week. I've designed a Carlina Astema deck. We've nicknamed it Order Killer. I think it's great. I am much more terrified when playing that deck. I am significantly more terrified of a Nyarlathotep ordering a Barbados than I am of a Nyarlathotep ordering literally anything else. Like, playing that deck, I am more scared of a Barbados, or a Barbatos, however you want to pronounce it, than I am of literally any other ordered card from an Isis, from a Nyarlathotep deck. And the pop-off deck doesn't play Barbados. So, like, again, I think you gotta change your approach. And that's a problem. We've almost always had generic good answer cards, just a lot of them are in black. That's a problem, at least it's not in wind. I think that it's across the board. Thunder Parasol's insane. The only, like, it can hit J rulers. Thunder Parasol's insane. Charlotte's Light Transformation Magic, while not removing them, typically solves the problem that you're dealing with.
Gradius in red.
Gradius in red. Green actually kind of has the worst, but they usually are playing Spark of Life now. Like, they've adjusted already and pivoted to playing Spark of Life, which I think is a good call. Feasting also feels good, right? Canceling enter effects. That feels pretty good. Turn 1 Little Red is insanely easy to kill. Gradius, die. Okay.
The wings that remove it from the game for black, die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That card's good.
Yeah. Don't know what generic kill spells you've seen in Wind besides the one cost 600 damage. Yeah, Spark of Life is pretty much
it. It was 500 damage. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Odin seems to be a lot better than expected. All the stun cards he had at his disposal. So, like, Odin gets to go, like, turn 1 Flute into turn 1 Odin enters the Game of Gods, which also answers any pop-off. At least that's not Isis. But then you also can sit on, like, Charlotte's Light Transformation Magic. Turns out, Isis feels really bad when she doesn't have any abilities. So, like, Charlotte's.
Crazy how that works, huh?
So just Charlotte's her. Like, Light Transformation Magic is actually a lot better than I gave it credit for in terms of making Isis feel bad. Because Isis really doesn't do a whole lot after the turn she comes in. Like, she's good, don't get me wrong, but like she's built to try to do something crazy on the turn she enters. So if you just like in response Charlotte's her, it's like whoops. Yeah,
we also still have his last lecture too.
Well,
Green.
It doesn't cancel orders.
It doesn't stop orders, no.
Right.
But it's there.
Yeah, I mean, like
doing anything else.
Yeah, it's still good stuff. I think, you know, I think the deck building a deck that is designed to building a deck that is designed to try to grind you out but potentially threatens aggression or pop off like that. Like, well, let's take Nyarlathotep. Like, it's a clear example, I think, because there's very clear cards. I think green's very good. Don't get me wrong. I think the Kaguya is very good. I think the current I think current Kaguya players, Miguel. I think current Kaguya players are playing Kaguya wrong. At least the ones that I've been playing against. But I think the Kaguya is very, very good. So like, let's look at some cards in Nyarlathotep that I think, if you're not trying to pop off, are awful. Sudden Manifestation of Power. That card is absolute. I don't like that card unless you're building to try to kill your opponent in turn 2. Like, it feels meh. Like, I'd rather flash in an ambushing Scorpion, right, and at least have a body and get that stone. I get people are like, well, it draws a card, and I understand. You're drawing enough cards anyway. Like, I think that card's not super great.
Ooh.
What?
So Taylor Marzano has a question in the chat about the usefulness of a card like Volmul, the snake that draws you 3 when you order it on turn 1.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Like, what would... So maybe, like, we change the conversation, right? Like,
sure.
What would an ideal turn 1 be if you don't just call Stone Pass?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That's a great point here. Like I said, I think that Odin and Loki actually have a really strong turn 1 order that is not designed to pop off. I think that Odin wants to, like, turn 1, especially if you have Odin enters the Game of Gods in hand. Like, Odin wants to go order into a flute, mill a Brunhild, and like then call Stone Pass, right? Leave up the flute. And the reason why is because then suddenly Odin enters the Game of the Gods can kill a 3-drop, right? So then you're sitting on like this punish, right? And then you can kind of go from there and set up your hand and stuff like that. Loki's very similar. Loki wants to go like turn 1, get a Volmul, which then turns on Loki's order effect. Like, I think that effect is one of the best tools that Loki has right now. Especially in the current kind of experience meta. So like a turn 1 Volmul, draw 3 cards. Then suddenly you're like, Loki's Deception doesn't feel as bad, right? Because you just drew 3. It also really helps to make Garmheld better, because you can, if you're going second, you will like play a Volmul, draw up, and if you don't cast anything else, you can discard for hand size. So you can just discard a Garmheld. So then suddenly for the whole game, your Garmhelds are 2, and you've turned that on turn 1, and you're sitting on the ability to shut stuff off. Like, those are the kinds of things of like a turn 1 play that I think is built towards this kind of slow rolling, right? I don't want to say like you're not trying to stall, but you're trying to pull the pace back and not show all your cards to kind of create openings. And we've talked about this even in the last meta, right? Of that, if you looked at competitive matches at high tier table play, it was these little tiny exchanges of like trying to open a window and then capitalize it, trying to open a window, then close it, then respond by opening a window. And those games, those decks that could do that were the ones that were very successful in the long term. And like, all in Nyarlathotep tries to open a window once. You're like, I'm opening the door! And then your opponent's like, well, I've shut the window. You can stay outside for the rest of the game. Bye. right? You like it's big and flashy, but if it gets answered, it feels really bad because you just don't have something there. Whereas, play a Barbados, burn your opponent out, be like, I have 5 stones, Barbados. Even if you kill it, I'm gonna give a bunch of my dudes swiftness and ping you a bunch of times and like get some chip damage in. Okay, that feels really good, right? Just
I want to throw in
go for it.
one more potential card that we could talk about on a turn 1. I really liked Dark Mage of Ma'at on turn 1.
Yeah.
Where, I'm going first and I, happen to get my darkness source and I play Dark Mage of Ma'at. You cannot banish 2 resonators, so you have to discard 2 cards. And so when you're going into your draw, you're only at 4. Seems pretty good to me. And it has Bane.
Yeah. Yep. And like as Loki,
good.
you can do that on 1, right? You can go order Mage of Ma'at. Give them, if they don't have anything that they played, you could use the coin because the coin can produce black for Loki, and then you're good to go. Like Loki, and like you say in the chat, Rustin, like a turn 1 setup. A turn 1 setup is, I think, the really only competitive. Like in my opinion, turn 1 setups are infinitely stronger than attempting turn 1 or turn 2 pop-offs right now. In terms of over the course of a tournament, playing a concept that people know, you're going to get further that way. I just think you're going to be more successful competitively. Casually and with your friends, if you guys want to goof around and try to pop off and kill each other, if that's what you guys enjoy, in a card game, kill each other in a card game, very clear, not in...
No, Jim, we know what you meant.
No, in a card game. You do that, but like, part of this is, the idea of... Part of this, always at these discussions has been, pulling from our competitive experience and talking about an idea in the competitive space. And I think that this is an important topic for people to hear about, think about, because I think it is going to change how you build and how you value cards. Like certain cards are a lot better than others based on how you are approaching your tempo. So tempo mid-range, turn 1 set Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah. Turn 1 play 7 color fish is still the best play.
Yes. You are my favorite right now.
I thought Nearly was a bunch of cantrips so you could threaten every turn. It's a bunch of cantrips in the sense that like those are okay if you have Isis. But like Isis is still very much a linchpin. Like if that's the way you're building a deck, Isis is still very much an important card. Isis and Red Wine and Basket. But those are very one-dimensional in the sense that like if they get answered, you kind of fall flat. Which is why I'm an advocate of playing Barbados in Isis decks. So you have, or in your Lithotip decks, you have like a backup way to kind of like make use of all these stones that you're producing. Like whoever wins the die roll and you guys winning now. We just spin the barrel and see who gets lucky.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So like again, it's one of those things where in terms of deck building, in terms of I don't remember when the last time we talked about this is, but it's how is your deck winning the game, right? And if the answer to that question is, well, I kill you on turn 2 or I lose, or like if the only answer you can come up with to that question is I kill you on turn 2, I think you're approaching your deck build wrong. Is that a fair like assessment? Would you guys agree?
It sounds like a life lesson to me, right? If your first plan fails and you don't have a pivot, it's probably not a good plan.
Yeah.
Just for all you kids out there, always have a pivot or
always
a plan
have
B.
A pivot, yeah.
Right.
Straight,
or even sometimes a plan C. Plan C's are good.
That's why I played mid range.
Hey, mid range. Stranger Jank. I mean, turn 1 is legit just situations, right? Like if Kaguya's turn 1 is turn 1 go Hanzo, isn't that going to be 90% of her play? No, don't play Hanzo on 1. Stop it.
Get some help.
Stop trying.
Stop it.
Everyone hear
Get
me.
some help.
Stop trying to play Hanzo on 1. It's a bad play. Like,
Stop making Raw Dog Hanzo a thing. You can't make Raw Dog
Stop.
Hanzo a thing.
like as a Kaguya player, your first action in any game should be, if you're on the draw, especially, it should be Call Stone Pass, threaten Feathsing, or Call Stone Pass, threaten Gale of the Moon. You should not be taking any actions during your main phase of your first turn. Stop doing it. It's bad. Like, you're the control deck. Stop it. Like, Paul, talk for a minute. I need to calm down.
I've been playing a lot of Kaguya since the set came out, and it's mostly because I really like the idea of just like having so many moons that I'm warping the gravity of New Valhalla and like flooding everything, and I just love that headcanon. And so I found that I never want to play Hanzo on turn 1 because I don't get nearly as many moons. But if I play him on turn 2, I just win. Like a lot. Like, I just ramp and will so quickly.
Because you played a Gale of the Moon and a Feathsing on turn 2. On turn 1.5.
Right. Well,
right?
If I called a stone that I didn't get a 6-stage stone, I usually will play Kage Enters the Game of Gods. Just to get an additional moon. And then I'm ahead on moons.
Why are you taking actions on your first turn as the control deck?
So I'm just messing around.
That's fair. Why is my water bottle?
And besides, if I don't get 6-stage stone, I can't order into Feasting.
That's true, which is why I said also Gale of the Moon. But I hear you. 2-drop cancel spell, get a moon.
With 1 will?
You have a coin, Paul. I'm talking about on the draw.
Hold on.
Talking about on the draw.
I am looking up this card because this does not sound like the card that I'm thinking of.
It's 2
Gale
will.
of the Moon?
Yeah, it's 2 will. Cancel target spell. Put a Wind Moon Edition token into the field.
Again, I still don't understand how I'm doing this on turn 1 with 1 stone.
I'm talking about if you're on the coin, Paul.
Oh yeah, well that obviously, obviously.
Asserting
like, why would I?
Yeah, Dark Sun is also very good against Kaguya. Card is very good.
As long as you're Odin.
Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty good in Loki. Because you can't like banish to like use Hanzo as a wall of wind, which is pretty nice. It also turns off Rabbit Ninja in case they're going for that. So there's things. All in all, though, as I've said before, as I said going into this meta. Oh, you know what? Here's a question, because now that we're talking about it. If turn 1, I think all three of us are the consensus that, generally speaking, trying to make a big push on turn 1 is not a good idea. Like, going into a meta where people are expecting that kind of stuff, going into that kind of thing, it's generally not. So with that being said, let's talk about 6-stage stone. How crucial then, like if doing something turn 1, especially ordering something turn 1, is not nearly as crucial because of the way that the expected response to from the meta is, does that take away some of the importance of an early 6-stage stone? Not to say that does it make 6-stage stone worse, because it doesn't. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, does it take away some of the importance of
Jeremy's saying
turn
6
one,
stage
6
stone
stage stone.
bad. Everybody, quick, sell your 6 stage stones at half price.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts and the chat's thoughts on this. Gentlemen?
Oh,
Say that
still
one
in
more
chat.
time.
Okay. If we are of the consensus that, and we are of the consensus, that trying to make a push on turn one is, for the most part, bad, especially for order rulers, does that diminish some of the importance of an early 6 stage stone then?
No.
Go on, tell me more.
Okay,
Say
cool.
more.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing about 6 stage stone on turn one is that the fact that so 6 stage stone, you have to really think a lot about an early 6 stage stone after turn one. On turn
Sure.
one, you don't have to think about an early 6 stage stone because once you hit it, your rulers are covered. You can do whatever you want with it. You can you can order in a feat sing with the
Right.
standing Kaguya easily there, so you don't have to worry about energize at that point either. It's just like, and obviously we're talking about this in the context of order rulers, because if you're playing 6 stage rulers or the fallen angel rulers, then clearly if you just there's no downside to opening 6 stage stone if you have tag
Right.
rulers.
Right.
So
But is it as big of a detriment to not hit it on turn one? I guess that's the better question. Like, is
yes
missing?
and no.
Okay, again, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So the reason I think that it is a detriment is because obviously you can continue the game out very easily if you're setting up the 6 stage stone turn one and you just kind of go into that through the rest of the game. But it does mean that the rest of the game is more constricted if you're not a tag ruler. So I think
Mhm.
that's the only downside to it, I would say. But the upsides, I think, especially because like a 6 stage stone after the turn one push, if the pop off isn't on turn one, actually gets a little bit worse if you go into the mid game, just because you have to plan out your turns that much more in advance,
Mhm.
knowing that you have to tap your ruler, and the chance that you don't get the 6 stage stone is extremely real.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think there's plus sides to each, but I think there are minus sides to each as well.
Sure.
I don't think that it's cut and dry, but at the same time, I still think that just the fact that you need to have the answers available turn one, and the fact that 6 stage stone gives you pretty much a no downside answer to the turn one is kind of a big deal, because then you
Sure.
start using turn two to set up.
Sure. No, that's very fair. Yo, to people to people in the chat who are talking about like 6 stage stone needing a promo, I've told the company, like, I have specifically said, hey, you're looking for promos for the upcoming stuff, and they've done promo stones before. Like, that's not an unheard territory. They've done promo special magic stones. I've talked about how we've got a lot of new players coming into the game. The input, like, that Magic Stone of the 6 Age does put in a lot of work for the new order rulers. It is a card worthy of even the people who have multiple playsets are saying this is a card worthy of a promo variant.
Agreed.
So like I have 3 personal playsets and I'm getting 2 more. Like, even I am saying like, hey, it's fine. We get a promo. So know that that's being communicated to people. Hopefully it's not a GP promo. If it is a GP promo, hopefully it's a participation promo, which means it'll flood the market pretty quick, and won't be crazy. But still, know that that's being communicated. Now we're getting a lot of spam bots.
Yeah.
We've made it, Jeremy.
We must have made it, man.
We've done it. We've done it.
We did it.
And yeah, also
I'm
just
calling
like,
it March promos. 6 Sage,
Magic Stone.
6 Sage Stone,
Okay.
and
And
Dark Alice Rabbit Princess.
Wanderer League.
For the Wanderer League, that would be the best.
Do it.
That would be the best. Yeah.
As far as your 6 Sage Stone question, though, I would say it depends.
Sure.
Right. So, like, if you're running Kaguya, you really do want 6 Sage Stone to be able to threaten like ordered feasting.
Sure.
Right. I don't know why it's hiding that. That's super weird. In a deck like Nyarlathotep, at least the way, the red deck that I've been playing, it hasn't needed 6 Sage Stone,
Yeah, it's
It
just playing
could?
fire magic stones.
but you're just playing fire magic zones.
Yeah.
In Odin, maybe if your game plan is like turn 1 Mistletoe, or if
Right.
you're going turn 1 Artillerist, that seems pretty good. Or turn 1 Flute even is really good.
Yeah, turn
So you don't necessarily need it.
Yeah.
You probably need it in Loki just for color fixing, because Loki does want to be a 2-color deck.
Well, Loki enters the game of gods also really helps with that. And you can play Magic Stone of Tides. So there's a very interesting thing about Magic Stone of Tides when you're playing. Most of the time, the color that Loki needs is 1 of an off color, which is silly. Which is actually really funny for Magic Stone of the Tides. So you can just randomize it, especially if you have a Loki enters the game of gods in your hand, because you could be like, try to produce evens, water, odds, multicolor. And then you're like, well, I hit the odds. I got the multicolor. I only needed 1 black anyway. I'll produce 1 black. And then if you're like, oh, I hit the evens. I got blue. Loki enters the game of gods. Turn that blue into black. You can still get there. So I've had situations come up like that. I was playing against Lars, and Lars was doing that exact thing to me, where he would if he rolled the blue random, he'd just use it to play Loki enters the game of gods and get the color he needed anyway. So there is some flexibility. I think for Loki, the thing for Loki is that makes the only part about 6H Stone that is really important for Loki, or that he really benefits from, she really benefits from, is being able to access Loki's order killer ability as fast as possible. But even then, that becomes less important if they're on the coin, right? More so than anyone else, I think that Loki's I'm going second. Order a 1-drop, almost immediately. But again, that's probably only against other order decks. If they're playing against 6 Sages or something, or Fallen or Wolfgang 2 or something like that, then maybe that's not as important. So what limits new players the most? Lack of rulers, lack of special magic stones, or lack of Marvel rares?
Let's take that question in the context of the current Saga Duel format.
Sure. I think that's a good question. That's a good piece. I also think you have to apply the context to if we're talking casuals versus competitive. I would say competitive-wise, the thing that limits the new players the most is lack of Marvel rares. Because competitive decks typically run anywhere from 11 to 12 Marvels, which is 3 boxes worth of Marvels. Getting perfect ratio, hitting perfect pulls. That's 3 boxes worth, right? Magic Stone of the 6 Sage. You can, if you find someone willing to, because I've found most people are willing to, you can usually buy a playset of them for about the cost of a single box. Maybe a little bit more, 120, 130. Most people give some kind of discount when you buy a full playset, so 120, 130. So if you really needed it, about the cost of a box. Rulers are everywhere because we've opened up so much boxes. Rulers are literally, I've given away rulers at our locals to new players just so they can just jump right in. But I don't think that's a limit. I would say that competitively, it's Marvel rares more than anything else. Casually, I honestly don't think there's anything limiting a new player casually. Especially if a casual player is playing. I guess I'll say this: the only thing limiting casual players is not pulling good removal. Especially if people in their local environment are playing decks like Nyarlathotep. That's a limiter to local players, right? More than a specific rarity, I would say. Because I think you can play Nyarlathotep and have fun with her without a Marvel rare. I think you can play Kaguya and have a good time without pulling Feastings. I think you can play Loki and have a good time without playing Feastings. Or Garmhelds. I think you can play Odin and have a good time without playing Mistletones. Like, I think casually, you don't need the Marvels to have a good time. I also don't think you need the 6 Sage Stones to have a good time. But based on the environment and like the competitive nature of the environment you're in, I think it's like first Marvel rares and then Magic Stone of the 6 Ages. Specifically, Magic Stone of the 6 Ages. In terms of like something that holds people back. Tier, there it is, Toby. It wouldn't be a Monday night without Toby telling us about Tier 0 Mikage. Thanks, bud. Tier 0 Mikage is
keeping that resolution alive this year, I see.
Is what's limiting new players for sure.
Yeah. Mike disagreed. That's why he left. So
Mike, you think that the limitations on special stones is what's most limiting for new players? Go ahead and talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. I think that especially if how dare YouTube stop us from seeing a nice little panel of Kikis from Rustin? Thank you, Rustin. Anyway, I think that the biggest thing with the special stones, obviously the monkey in everyone's back is 6 Sages Stone being near mandatory if you're playing any competitively viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about casuals. There's nothing stopping casual players from playing this game.
Agreed.
Except for your locals not carrying product, which at that point just scream and cry until somebody gives in to your demands.
Or buy Odyssey product from Odyssey Games. The pre-orders for Game of Gods Reloaded should be up in the next week or so.
I love Game of Gods.
And whatever you don't get in your boxes.
Game of God, and for whatever you don't get in your boxes, you can go to ccgprime.com to get all your singles. They have over 100,000 Force of Will singles.
Your sponsors.
Yeah, almost.
And I just heard we got 150,000 more.
We're gonna work out with them to build that you will be able to buy the Ruler School cube. Like you will literally just be able to buy the cube and just like have it delivered to you. So that'd be cool.
Okay.
Anyway, Mike, continue.
Yes, back to what I was saying. The biggest thing about special stones right now is that the only really good ones are obviously 6 Sages, but also really none of the other ones. I think that the biggest thing stopping people from playing, like if you want to just play like a base green deck that can just fit into other colors, Stone Knowledge is fine, especially.
It's 40 cents.
About the fact that
it's very cheap.
Dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Imaginary Satan, I think, is what, like $7 right now or something? Maybe not even that much.
Yeah, maybe.
It was a super rare, right? But
no,
either way,
Imaginary Satan was a base rare.
Was a base rare? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, base rares and supers are about the same in terms of their rarity, from my experience. I think I normally end up with more supers than regular rares, but that's aside the point. But I think the biggest thing is that, like, the ones that really are worth their salt are the ones that are the most expensive, and because of that, you have players that are looking to play these tag decks, and suddenly, if you don't have 4 6 Sages Stone, you are basically playing with about a deck that's at maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of the power that it would be at if you had, the stone that literally breaks your rulers. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for competitive.
Let me check something out real quick here. Real quick.
Yeah. Because competitively speaking, I still think that the tag rulers are the best rulers in the game. I don't have as much respect for the dual color cluster rulers so far. I think that they're good, but I don't think that they're as game defining as something like Feasting or Carlina.
Let's see. Feasting 100-year. Let's look at Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, Marvels are quite expensive right now. They're at a good price. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think they're at
10
a
to
fair
15,
price.
like 10 to 15 for the non-foils, which is about as expected.
Yeah, which is a chunk of change,
right?
But it's, I mean, it's
no
Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Pokemon.
But you're also, here's another thing to think about though. You're going to be picking up boxes of this new set that are going to have those Marvels in it.
Yeah.
For any deck moving forward, you have to have a card from a set.
Yeah.
That was printed.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair point. So I think I would say as a follow up to that, there are competitively viable decks that, without 6 Sage Stone, are still an option, but still require.
Okay.
But still, I mean, I think that a like Nyarlathotep, not trying to pop off on turn 1 constantly, playing 20 basic fire magic stones, I still think is a competitively viable deck. So the point I'm trying to make is, like, you have an option to play competitively that doesn't require 6 Sage Stones. But that being said, like, that deck has to have a fair number of marvels, right? So, like, there's ups and downs, right?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, that's fair. Casually, though, nothing. Do whatever you want.
Casually, though, I'm just gonna put together a block of 61 ofs and just throw them at my opponent, and if one of them lands at them, it's fine. I guess
Yeah,
I just win the
exactly.
game.
Looking into the chat here, what decks are poised to take over the competitive scene? I think Feasting Moonstart is still going to be present. I think Feasting might pivot to Almerius, maybe. I've seen some silly, interesting things that have made me think that Almerius might have more merit, despite the fact you don't have Final Stance to be able to do anything. I think Gruus Ballesta Feasting or Gruus Ballesta Almerius is suddenly, which is a very different deck, is suddenly found some cake. I think that the tag ruler to look at in terms of Fallen as like the base and to kind of work around for the base is Astema. I actually think that Astema has gained a lot of like power now in terms of viability. So that's my thought there. And then I think Loki, Kaguya, and Nyarlathotep are poised to be good competitively.
I want to do this one. Wait, nobody block this one. I want to block this one.
Okay, fair.
Okay. Sniping.
Let's see. 3 boxes. It's like 4 boxes to feel like close, 5 boxes to feel very comfortable in the idea of getting you a full play set. I think that's iFizz asking that. Yeah, iFizz. 4 to 5 boxes is where you can feel comfortable. So like 2 pre-release kits also usually really helpful. Bayonetta. New Frontiers currently is all of Saga Cluster and the first set of Dual Cluster. That's correct. Let's see.
Bayonetta, I'd say the power levels are pretty much on par right now. Like I don't think Saga Cluster set 1 is like leaps and bounds beyond Dual Cluster set 1.
Oh,
at this
definitely
point.
not. I think Dual Cluster Set 1
Yeah.
is definitely better than Saga Cluster Set 1. I just really hope that Dual Cluster Set 2 and 4 are not a higher power level than Saga Clusters 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I don't think that Dual Cluster, as it stands right now, delegitimizes the strength of Saga Cluster. If that makes to that point of it, like I think that there are Saga Cluster rulers and Saga Cluster strategies that are just as viable competitively as Dual Cluster strategies, and vice versa. Feasting Molest.
I would say the steady increase of power from New Valhalla to now, I would say, is less than what we had from Ray Cluster to New Valhalla DBV.
Well, we know my thoughts on DBV.
Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, if you don't take into Scheherazade, I would say like that increase is significantly less.
So I
feel like we've been pretty good.
Full power Sherry versus every full power deck that we've been seeing in the format. Who wins?
Jerry.
You say that, huh? You think Sherry beats the pop-off? Because I don't remember Sherry having great turn 1 answers to pop-offs for the most part, except for like a Scarlet's Agony.
To a turn 1 pop-off.
I think a turn 1 Yarly beats Sherry full power. None of the... Well, Sherry gets access to Severing Winds if we're talking full power.
Oh yeah, back in.
So actually, I that's tricky.
Oh, with Severing Winds, there's no way.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Severin Wins might seal that.
Yeah, I would think so
Yeah.
because like you can leave. I'm trying to think of like what stories you leave up, right? So they're like, well, I'll just order something so you can't cancel it, and then you've got like Severing Winds plus Last Days of a Powerless Dragonoid.
Yeah.
So that to me feels like a really good opener against like the pop off. But worth exploring. Yeah, if we're talking full power, we have to talk about like everything that was legally usable by
Are we hearing maybe a possible cross-format tournament? Kaltuma, make it happen.
Just like
an exhibition match.
Just like probably that.
I'd be down.
Like Sherry can only play cards from her era when she was peak unbanned.
What about and then we had
like Lapis Rhea.
Oh, and then we had peak Persia into the mix too. Because turn 2 pop off versus turn 1 pop offs.
Yeah, no, thank you. Because then you can still steal Swiftness with Death Scythe of the ordered card. Right? Because it becomes a J roller.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. I mean, it's an exhibition feature match, maybe. Who knows? No.
Who wants to do this one?
Welser and Celesta.
Goodbye. Welcome to the void.
Maybe feature matches of full power decks. Yeah, people quite complain a lot about green, but we are in a much better state than Outer World Severing Winds, at least. Yeah, I mean, like I still stand by the fact that there are that the format has a lot more viability, and I still stand on the fact that like every competitive deck that I've been able to play and think of, I have found something else in the competitive realm, like a competitively viable deck that I could imagine seeing at the tournament that if I sat down across from, I would be worried. Right? I haven't found a deck yet that avoids that scenario. Which is different than saying like, the deck that I'm concerned about that could beat me is something no one would ever bring to a tournament, right? Like that's a very different threat. So having a deck, knowing that there's a deck in competitive contention that I will struggle against, regardless of what I build, I think is an inherently healthier environment than anything else. So Jeremy's brain is smoking right now. Yeah, just thinking about like building content, everything else. Lapis Rhea no ban. Sherry wins any match. That's an interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe. Just open up triple Severing Winds. Beep.
Percy's like, Sacred Elf.
Hot take, but I think most modern decks beat pre-errata RR. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's because the strength of
what was the most broken thing the pre-errata Reflect Refrain did? Like,
Alice
I'm gonna
World.
double tap my Elvish Priest.
Yeah.
That, but also double tap my Elvish Priest to play Footsing on turn 1.
Yeah, so just Carlina. Like it's just like what Carlina is currently doing.
Crazy.
Yeah. Wouldn't full power Sylvia destroy Sherry?
What?
Sylvia like green, like OG Sylvia?
Like bad Sylvia? Yeah, probably.
Like seppuku Sylvia? Like is that what we're talking about?
Would Millium 2 be competitive today with no bans?
I mean, Millium 2 wasn't competitive in its heyday.
So, Brad would totally destroy Sherry. Let me
we can. And on that note, full power Prisia destroy Sherry. No.
I think we need full power.
Full power Prisia wouldn't destroy Sherry because Sherry gets to play 1 Severing Winds, which hurts you a lot, and 2 she gets to play Scarlet's Agony, which completely disrupts the entire Prisia OTK. Like, Prisia has to successfully attack twice to deal enough damage after opening the Nuts Hand. And Sherry goes,
you can't attack twice if you attack once.
It turns out you can't attack twice if you can only attack once. Like,
also, let's talk about the fact that Lorite exists. So,
and Sherry had access to Lorite. So yeah, you're even more screwed. Yeah, no. Full power Prisia doesn't beat full power Sherry. Like, not even close.
Full power
Order.
Baja does
Enter
nothing
effect?
against most
Nope,
of this
alright.
too.
Enter trigger to get a stone? No, cancel. Oh, shit.
I love how IFIS is talking about like full power Baja, not implying that Percy was just better Baja.
Yeah. Saga 1 rulers good enough to play competitive? No.
Hey, Tier 0 Mikage, come on, man.
Unfortunately. Sorry.
The most valid ruler to answer that question as a yes would be Celesta, and she is definitely not good enough. Like
Tier
leaps
B
and
or
bounds,
C
the best
at
ruler
most.
in
Yeah.
EDL.
Yeah.
But like things exist to just stop her.
Yep.
So
Like Featsing.
like transformation magic.
Like everything.
Or Featsing.
Or Gradius.
Wow. It's like every
Phant-
color has an answer.
Phantasmal Scarlet.
It's true.
Big time.
Phantasmal Scarlet, also a big. Yeah, also, yeah, good card. Yeah. So, there you go. With that end, we are going to do our giveaway for the night. This is going to be a giveaway for people in the U.S. only. Sorry for our international friends. I do want to talk about... so for our question for the night, I will give you until my clock on my hand hits 10:07. And I will say... of the 4 rulers for the next cluster, Game of Gods Reloaded, which is Alice, Shiva, Deus Ex Machina, and I think Dante. It's either Dante or Lucifer. It feels very much like Dante. Which are you most excited for? So put that in the chat. You have until my clock here reaches, you got about 2.5 minutes. US only, give me your thoughts on which one you're most excited for. We'll give you an entry into this contest for a free playset of Dark Alice Smile promos. So... I mean, like, it's gotta be. I mean, it's gotta be Alice, right? It's. I mean, like, it's Alice.
So is it even a question? Machina all the way.
Machina all the way. Okay.
Love me my machines, man.
Okay.
Although I will say he is tied for first place with Alice.
Wow.
Alice is he.
Oh, okay, cool. Dustin coming in with the proper response.
Dante from the Devil May Cry series. Diamond Dude. Rusted W. And Knuckles. Yeah, Dante and Knuckles. Yeah.
That's a $40 value.
Are they really
only
$10?
4 payments of $19.99.
Are they really $10? Those Dark Alice Smiles really $10 still? That's crazy.
I think so.
They're really nice.
The Exorcist mages are like
waifu tax.
That's true. A little bit of waifu tax.
Can't fight it.
That's true. I do want to say thank you all so much who have been in the chat. Today's been really, really active. This has been a really good discussion. I love it when we can have a great discussion in response to questions and see, new people coming in and everything else. It's a lot of fun. It's why we do this. It's why we shifted to doing the live vodcasts so that we could interact with you more rather than just recording and posting them because the interaction with you guys is so much better. Rance needs to come by sometime so I can show him how to play Force. Dan? K. I'll just answer that with a K. You seldom, sir. I mean, that's fair. Taking in a hotel and I'm there.
there is a hotel in Ionia.
Game of Gods has sold very well, as far as I can tell. It's sold very, very well. We've seen a lot of people picking up product. We've seen a lot of new people, especially if you can extrapolate Odyssey Games' local environment out, we've had a lot of new players come in, buy starter decks, and then jump to a box. They're actually following a flow path to the on-ramp, which is what we talked about Game of Gods being really good for. So if you can extrapolate that's the experience here, the hope would be that experience is replicated in other places as well. So, and we've seen a lot of growth in the online discords and the global group and stuff. So yes, and everything that I'm hearing from the company is yes. So there you go. If you have a couch, sir. Okay, here we go. We've got all our entrants. The winner is Mike. Give me a number between 1 and 7.
6.
Paul, give me a number between 1 and 3.
2.
Okay, 9 times it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the winner is Master Denius. You are our winner of the Dark Alice Smile promos. Thank you so much. I need the ruler school content at gmail.com. Go ahead and send me your YouTube name, your name, and your address to that email address there in the chat, and we will get that promo set sent out to you.
First name Master, last name Denius.
There you go. Hopefully, yeah, as far as I'm aware, there are more starter decks down the way. They might come out alongside set 3, but we'll have to wait and see what comes out. There weren't any announced for set 2, but it has been communicated, and my communication with the company has been that they understand how important the starter decks are. So might be like a break when we get them alongside set 3, which I'm fine with. Set 3 is typically when we get some kind of supplemental product anyway. So in light of a mini set, a next set of starters would be totally fine too. So yeah, there you go. Congratulations. Having a great time here. Is Master Denius also the one who got the Chibi Carlina promo? If so, that's dope. Congratulations for back-to-back.
Busted.
Yeah, busted. So there you guys have it. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. It has been a pleasure as always. I have been DM073, and I have been joined by my Grants.
Hey guys, this has been DMO73 saying class dismissed.
Great. And we've also been joined by Paul Reisman.
This has been DO74.
Oh no.
Catch you later, guys. Clash is in session. Let's go.
Okay, so
Let's
with
go,
that,
guys.
have a good night, everybody. And until this Wednesday for
We
the
had to
feature
change it
match,
up.
class is dismissed. Have a good night, everyone.